Dump on me once, shame on you. Dump on me twice, well, let's just say, I think we're about to be rich. With only a few days supply left of lotion and tissues, moon boys worldwide just received the biggest news we've ever seen. But what if I told you that it's about to get much, much bigger? So if you understand, it's always dumpiest before the pumpiest, and let me tell you, it's about to get really pumpy. Hit that like and subscribe. Get signed up with Femex if you want to buy Bitcoin, altcoins, or trade. And without any further ado, let's completely, absolutely, and perpetually dump on in. Where we see the price of Bitcoin right now on a daily chart, actually, after getting a nice little squeeze up for the past 2 days, actually 3 days, going from 89,000 to 100,000. Currently, we're sitting right around there. We just got some absolutely massive news, and I also want to talk specifically, I'm sure you've heard, about some insane altcoin news. But most importantly, this is a topic and an idea that I've really wanted to discuss for a while, and I found a pretty good thread that I'm just going to briefly look at a few points at about why, fundamentally why. I'm going to explain kind of what is about to happen here that honestly has never happened before, and it never could have happened before. This was never a possibility before. Okay, especially, you have governments, anti-crypto governments, and you have Bitcoin being attacked on all ends. And the only people really supporting Bitcoin are little moon boys, like little retail for the past every single bull cycle, except this one. And I want to really dive into the meat and tomatoes of this and really look at something that I think is going to absolutely leave you shaking, quivering, and dripping like something that shakes, quivers, and drips a lot. So let's actually dump on into this. We see that breaking, Trump is considering a U.S. crypto reserve, potentially prioritizing coins like Solana, XRP, and obviously as well, we see that with this plan, it's not going to be only just Bitcoin, but these altcoins would absolutely explode if we saw this. The idea of an America First strategy reserve that would prioritize digital coins founded in the US specifically, like Solana, USD Coin, Ripple. In recent weeks, Trump has met with founders of these coins and, sources said, is receptive to the idea. Now, there's some mixed opinions about this, but all I want to say is that, first of all, if you're holding altcoins, if you're holding Solana, if you're holding XRP, if you're holding Cardano, if you're holding these coins, holy guacamole times infinity. This would be a very big catalyst to an alt season, unlike anything we've ever seen before. And this is not even the big thing that I wanted to jump into, but honestly, looking at it from this angle, this would be completely massive. And this is not even the bombshell that I wanted to talk about, and I'm going to talk about in this video. But if we're talking about truly, trillions of dollars flooding into this space, and you really want altcoins to succeed, good golly gumdrops, this is going to get the job done. Something like this, guys, I mean, for pizza's sake, we've been talking about a Bitcoin strategic reserve. In fact, the chances of that have just increased. I'm going to look at that in a second as well in the betting markets. But a Bitcoin strategic reserve is something, a month ago, people were saying there's no shot. Now, with just a couple of days left until we potentially see a Bitcoin strategic reserve, the idea of altcoin reserves are also being entertained by this administration. I want you to grab your lotion. I want you to watch this video first. But after you're done watching this video, I want you to just go crazy, man. I want you to grab your lotion and just do what you gotta do, okay? I want you to go absolute nut mode. Actually, leave a comment below if you're about to go absolute nut mode after you watch this video, of course. Absolutely banana town. So we also see the odds of Trump creating a national Bitcoin reserve are on the rise. A 48% chance this year, and you can see it actually spiking up. Yesterday, I believe it was in like the 30% chance. You see this massive spike over the last 24 hours we've seen. Now, actually, my experience with Polymarket, again, this is not guaranteed. These are just the betting odds, but the Polymarket betting odds were very accurate with Donald Trump winning. In fact, they were like the only polling that was correct. Every other major poll was saying that Biden was going to win. Or sorry, I totally forgot it wasn't even Biden there. It was Kamala, right? All of the other things were saying, oh, Kamala's got this in the bag. I mean, they were lying, obviously, because all internal polling was not showing that. But this was actually a very accurate way to measure the actual stance and the probability of it happening. So keep that in mind. We also see that people don't really understand that the concept that all fiat currencies eventually trend to zero. That's just the concept. They always trend to zero. For example, literally every single fiat ever and forever, and every asset will also trend to zero versus Bitcoin, as Bitcoin reprices the entire world. We have never had something like Bitcoin exist, but we have seen fiat currency after fiat currency go to zero, trend to zero over time for hundreds of years. Fiat currency that can be perpetually, infinitely debased and printed, and governments can manipulate it, that has always eventually ended poorly. They have always eventually ended and gone to zero. In fact, the US dollar in the last 100 years has basically, it hasn't gone to zero, but pretty much in terms of purchasing power, it has lost so much purchasing power. And the simplest example of this, how much did a house cost 100 years ago? I don't know, like 5 grapes and a banana, right? Now, how much does a house cost now? A lot. Depends where you buy, but you're looking at least a couple $100,000, most likely. You could live in a box or something for cheaper, but realistically, let's be honest, guys. Houses are expensive, right? How much is a carton of milk? How much is... everything's expensive because the US dollar and all fiat currencies lose purchasing power. So even if you don't like crypto, even if you don't like Bitcoin, this is a separate fact. Fiat currencies go to zero, and Bitcoin being your choice, those are two non-exclusive things. You can have one view without the other. However, I just happen to hold both views because I have a brainstem. Basically, if you see that current fiat currencies always trend to zero, and you have an option for the first time literally in history to get in on a revolutionary, truly a technology. It is truly a technology. The ledger, the decentralized ledger, you have the ability to allocate your wealth to that instead, and not only keep your value, but actually make a ton. Like your value increases exponentially every couple of years. You have that as an option. It's a 1 IQ plus play. You need to have at least 1 IQ point. If you have less than 1 IQ point, then you won't buy Bitcoin. But if you have at least 1 IQ point, then naturally you will buy Bitcoin. That's just how it goes. I don't make the rules. I just read them. We also see that, and this is a very interesting post, and I really want to talk about the idea of this. Crypto Amsterdam highlighting. I wanted to just post a few things here. The fundamentals are exploding, but the room for upside within our usual cycle structure and diminishing returns is shrinking. So this is the idea of a super cycle, but a real one in a way that's fundamentally different than ever before. Many older, successful assets with strong fundamentals started with a period of diminishing returns until something changed, and that pattern broke, and they entered a super cycle. For example, the S&P, it was when America became the world superpower. For Apple, it was the introduction of the iPhone, because I don't know if some of you guys, I look a lot younger than I am. I'm actually, if you would take a guess, I'm actually probably a lot older than people would guess. I look very young. So does everyone in my family. We look like babies. But the point is, I'm aware of this, and Apple was not this insane revolutionary company always. When the iPhone came out, it was literally like that defining moment. With NVIDIA, for example, as well. I remember the only thing I thought about NVIDIA a couple years ago was, I can play my video games with a good graphics card. Now, with AI, NVIDIA has exploded. And with Bitcoin, governments turning pro-Bitcoin ETFs, this is a big one, ETFs, but BlackRock, strategic Bitcoin reserves, and the world, and governments potentially around the world fighting to get some of it, not even like allocating everything they have to it, but just getting some of it. Because if every country in the world only bought 1% of what they could allocate to it, the price would explode. The point is, there is an inflection there when things go absolutely banana mode. And the main point he says here is this line is crucial for price action, macro trends, and cycles. Once that line breaks, where things really shift, it reshapes everything. Our price action, our dynamics, our whole speculation market are based on a certain price action below this line. This is the line we're talking about here, where we're seeing diminishing returns in Bitcoin, right? However, price action above this line will be totally different, and so will our dynamics in the market. The older and stronger the resistance, the bigger and longer the breakout. Also seen in other assets. What he says here is he's not here to predict when it breaks. He doesn't know. But whether it breaks or not is the key. And this line will redefine all dynamics after this cycle. And I agree. I mean, most people in this space, actually, this is a very consensus opinion. It's not even really opinion. Bitcoin's returns have been diminishing, right? From like 2009 to 2012, if you had bought Bitcoin at any point in that time, in that like 2009 to 2012 time period, goodness gracious, you would be loaded to the gills. Meaning, let's say you bought a couple $100 of Bitcoin back in 2010. I mean, that's hundreds of Bitcoin. You would have a lot of money, right? So the point is, ever since then, buying Bitcoin has given diminishing returns. The most money you ever could have made was at the beginning. However, what this suggests is that if we're truly going to get global adoption, that fundamentally will change, and it has to change. And that's extremely bullish. If we look, actually, one of the posts I want to look at is this. These are the price predictions for Bitcoin this cycle. We've seen, and this kind of, you can pause the screen if you want to read what each prediction is from, but anywhere from 150 to about 250K is very consensus. And then there's a few outliers of 350, 400K, and even a million. And this is all of these predictions are based on all the models that we know. And actually, as Fred says right here, there is a big gap above 250K, right? That's where things really go bananas. The point is, though, the consensus is right around that range. But if things truly break, we see this trend line break, and if we see global adoption and something we've never seen before, for example, I was just showing, I actually want to show this. This is the S&P right here, Bitcoin, Nvidia, and Apple. Look at all of these charts. They have diminishing returns up to a certain point. 15 years it took Nvidia to break its diminishing returns. Coincidentally, Bitcoin is about 15 years old. But anyway, Apple, it took, I mean, how many years is this? From like the early 80s to about so over 20 years for Apple, or right around 20-ish years for Apple to break its diminishing returns. S&P, we go back to, 1871 all the way. It took like 100 years. I mean, a very long time for the S&P. But Bitcoin, first of all, Bitcoin is outpacing the internet. It's outpacing other revolutionary technologies, specifically like the internet. That's very big. But the point is, you can see this. And this blows my mind. Because a lot of people are not, this is like a relatively new thought people have been having over the past couple of weeks, or maybe even this year. This is a newer thought process where, will Bitcoin just have diminishing returns forever? I have always struggled with that idea, because fundamentally, if Bitcoin is going to succeed and if it's going to become a global reserve currency, and if nations around the world are going to buy it, how could it have diminishing returns forever? Won't there be a point where things fundamentally change? And that's just truly the idea of the super cycle. It's not some like crazy idea, but this fundamentally makes sense to me. And I think if you're watching this video, I think it's very easy to see why it makes sense. It's not a stretch whatsoever. In fact, you're seeing these examples right on my screen right here. I don't know. I think that, to sum it up, I don't think anyone has enough Bitcoin. I think that's the easiest way to say this. And another thing I want to highlight is that pension funds are buying Bitcoin. Over $55 trillion in total assets under management by global pension funds. This is a giant tsunami also waiting to get into the space. And we see that Fed's Christopher Waller saying we're roughly going to have maybe 3 to 4 rate cuts possible this year. Whereas a couple of days ago, before we got this latest CPI, people were saying actually maybe zero cuts, right? So maybe the market was it's just shifting, right? Every month it kind of shifts. And we're actually realizing, hey, inflation maybe not be under control. And with Bitcoin loans, this is another massive thing I think people need to factor in. Fiat Hawk delves into it in this post. In the past, to enjoy fiat gains, you had to sell Bitcoin. This creates sell pressure and creates a tax obligation, fundamentally putting downward pressure on Bitcoin. But in the future, you take out a loan against some of your Bitcoin. Now there is zero sell pressure and no taxes. Most completely underestimate what this means. And as you can see, somebody asked, like, has this been around for years? But not by big reputable banks, and it has not been, realistically, has not been utilized. Just gigantic. Another bullish point, another bullish perspective to look at this from. We also see a potential Litecoin ETF, right? A lot of things checked. This is interesting. I think we honestly are going to see more altcoin ETFs, and that's crazy. I think that's very bullish for altcoin holders. And we see that the Bitcoin balance on exchanges just hit a 7-year low. Look at this chart. I've been watching this chart week after week, but the Bitcoin balance on exchanges has never seen such a long, sustained drop like this. People are saying, oh, it's just a supply shock. When are we actually going to pump? There's going to be a point where it catches up to them and they realize, wow, there was a supply shock. And I just hope that you're positioned and prepared accordingly. So for example, XRP actually just hit a new all-time high today for the very first time since 2018. Completely bananas. Up about 6% or so roughly right now. I think that XRP, along with the altcoins in general, we're about to go banana mode. This is the entire altcoin market. These are the previous all-time highs at about 1.7 trillion. We're at about 1.47 trillion. I think after this most recent test at the very beginning of December, about a month ago, we're going to be lifting off soon. And I think it will come with the Trump presidency. If we're truly going to be pro-crypto in terms of the incoming administration, and maybe that spreads to the rest of the world, because believe it or not, the US is a very influential country. If we become very pro-crypto, I think that I don't think anyone is really bullish enough for what comes next. We've never seen something like this. That's what's crazy to me. I've been making these videos for like 8 years, and I've had people in the comments have mixed opinions, but one bearish viewpoint that I've heard a million times basically is like, well, nobody's using it. What is all of these negative things? But now those people are completely silent, because if you want to fundamentally argue about a bearish case for Bitcoin, you have like nothing to work with, okay? The Bitcoin ETFs were the first slap in the face to any fundamentally bearish people on the space. Now, Bitcoin is a part of most people's portfolio via MicroStrategy, via ETFs, via MicroStrategy's inclusion into the QQQ. So many people are holding Bitcoin, whether they realize it or not, in some form. And that's only going to continue. Once the Bitcoin ETFs were approved, that fundamentally changed everything. And we have not even seen 1% of the effects of what that will actually do, in my opinion. The Bitcoin spot ETFs have more inflows in the first year than gold ever could have imagined, right? Gold ETFs have existed for like over 2 decades, and Bitcoin ETFs completely blew them out of the water. Insane, right? I don't think that trend is changing anytime soon. Bitcoin does something that gold simply never could. It is a better in every single way version of gold. And I think people are slowly realizing that. Even the people that are the biggest gold fans in the world, even they, like, if they're actually honest with themselves, they realize, holy baloney, this is better than gold. And as well, I do believe that in just a few days, we will see the downtrend in the DXY begin, a massive downtrend. And the SPX is at a very critical point. So, for example, the NASDAQ is down a little bit today. The Dow Jones is down a little bit. SPX is like right at even. But overall, look at the daily chart for Bitcoin. We're actually above the 21 and 50-day moving averages. Momentum is ticking up a little bit. And overall, so far, the lowest we got was 89,000. The 21-week moving average is all the way down to 80,000. Are we going to get there? I don't know. This market is very bullish. I think it couldn't be more obvious. I'm incredibly bullish. Specifically, we are just a few days away. We are one more trading day away, basically, until a new administration that is pro-crypto. This is extremely bullish. And get signed up with Femex or BITUNIX below if you want to buy Bitcoin, altcoins, or trade. Without any further ado.